Hello and welcome everyone to TechDaily.ai. I'm David, and I'm really excited to be walking you through today's story.
And I'm Sophia. It's great to be here.
Before we jump in, just a quick message for all of you listening. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, just visit TechDaily.ai to get started today.
Short and sweet.
Exactly. Now, today we are unpacking a story that sits right at the intersection of high-stakes tech, international geopolitics, and, well, what I can only describe as the industrialization of crime.
Right.
We're looking at the hunt for the leadership of Black Basta.
It is a massive story. And, usually when we talk about cyber attacks, the focus is almost entirely on the victims, the hospital that couldn't operate, or maybe the pipeline that had to shut down.
Right.
But this story, it flips the camera around. We aren't just looking at who got hit. We're looking at exactly who did the hitting.
And what we're seeing isn't, a couple of kids in a basement drinking energy drinks. The documents coming out of this investigation reveal a corporate structure that, honestly, it rivals some legitimate tech startups. We're talking about a Russian mastermind, specific HR-defined roles, and a trail of over 600 victims.
It completely dismantles that lone wolf stereotype. This is organized crime in the truest sense of the word. And the reason we're talking about it today is because of this huge news that dropped this January 2026. This wasn't just a local arrest. This was a geopolitical maneuver.
So let's look at the scale of that takedown. You had law enforcement from Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Ukraine, and the UK all coordinating at the same time.
That's a logistical nightmare to pull off.
It is, which tells me this target was an extremely high priority.
It was an absolute dragnet. And the physical aspect is what really stands out to me. So often in these cyber investigations, action just means, what, seizing a domain name?
Or shutting down a server remotely, yeah.
Exactly. But here, you had police in Ukraine, specifically in the Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk regions, literally kicking down doors.
Right. Raiding the physical homes of suspected members.
Exactly. They seized computers, phones, bank records, large amounts of cash, and crypto wallets. They didn't just turn off the lights, they stripped the house. Digital forensic investigators are probably tearing those devices apart right now, which is just going to yield an incredible amount of intelligence.
Okay, so before we get into the how of their operation, which is fascinating, let's contextualize the why. Why did 5 nations mobilize for Black Basta specifically? There are, dozens of ransomware gangs out there. What made these guys public enemy number one?
It really comes down to impact and target selection. Black Basta was arguably the heavyweight champion of the last 3 years. They were active from March 2022 through February 2025. In that window, they didn't just hit random businesses.
No.
They went after critical infrastructure and healthcare systems, primarily in the West.
Which is usually a red line, right?
Yeah.
There's almost this, code of conduct in some of those darker circles. You don't hit hospitals because it brings way too much heat.
Exactly. And Black Basta just ignored that rule. They amassed hundreds of millions of dollars in ransom, but they also put lives at risk. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, they issued a major alert about them back in November 2024.
And once CISA is calling you out by name,
you've moved from criminal nuisance to national security threat.
So the response had to be overwhelming. Now let's pivot to the internal workings. You mentioned it operates like a corporation, and the breakdown from Ukraine's Prosecutor General Ruslan Kravchenko was incredibly detailed.
It reads like an org chart you'd find on LinkedIn. Kravchenko noted the group had over 20 active members, but they weren't generalists. They had these highly specific job descriptions.
Let's break those roles down, because the terminology, it gives us a really clear picture of how specialized this all has become. The reports mention that 2 of the suspects detained in Ukraine were hash crackers. Now, to most people, that probably sounds like a breakfast cereal.
Right, but in cryptography, that is a very specific, very difficult job. To understand it, you have to know how companies store passwords. So when you create a password, the system shouldn't save it as plain text. It runs it through an algorithm that turns password 123 into a long string of random characters. A hash.
Like a digital fingerprint.
Precisely. And the key is that it's a one-way street. You can turn the password into a hash, but you can't easily turn the hash back into the password. So if a hacker steals a user database, they just get these, useless fingerprints.
Unless they have a half cracker.
Exactly. The hash cracker's entire role is to take those stolen fingerprints and just throw massive computing power at them, trying billions of combinations to reverse engineer the original password. They are the battering ram. Their only job is to break that lock.
So they break the door down and then they just step aside.
Yeah, they hand off the access to the next specialist. And that brings us to the other role mentioned, the crypter. There was a raid back in August in Kharkiv where they caught a guy doing this.
And a crypter isn't the person deploying the ransomware. This is more of a technical support role.
You could call it that. It's essentially quality assurance for malware. Antivirus software is always evolving, looking for signatures of malicious code.
Mm-hmm.
If you just email a standard piece of ransomware, security software will flag it immediately.
So the crypter is the camouflage expert.
That's a perfect analogy. The crypter writes code that wraps around the malware, obfuscating it. They cloak the weapon so it looks innocent to the scanners. They make sure the package gets past the guards before it detonates.
It's disturbing to realize there are people whose entire 9 to 5 is just figuring out how to bypass Norton or McAfee. And then, once the attack works, you have a completely different team handling the victim.
Yes, the negotiators. This is the customer service department from hell. These people likely never touch a line of code. Their skill set is psychology. Leverage. They manage the chat portals, they pressure executives, and they handle the money.
It really highlights that this is a supply chain. You've got the access brokers, the weapon designers, the camouflage experts, and the closers. And like any complex supply chain, you need an executive to run it all.
Which brings us to the man at the top, the CEO.
Oleg Nefedov.
That's the name. A 35-year-old Russian national. And right now, his face is on Interpol's International Most Wanted list.
And those leaked chats gave us some interesting, if strange, aliases for him.
They did. He went by GGAA and, oddly enough, Trump. Or maybe Tramp.
Using the name of a former U.S. president as your criminal handle is certainly a choice. But based on the files from the BKA, that's the German Federal Criminal Police, his role was very much that of a traditional CEO.
It was. He wasn't just a figurehead. He was making the strategic decisions, deciding which companies to target. He handled recruitment, finding those talented hash crackers and cryptors and bringing them on board. And most importantly, he managed the finances.
He controlled the crypto wallets.
He controlled the money. He paid the salaries, decided how the loot was split. He was running a multinational enterprise.
So here's the question that I think everyone listening is asking right now. We know his name. We have his photo. We know he's 35. We know he's the CEO. Why isn't he in handcuffs like his employees in Ukraine?
Well, that brings us to the geopolitical reality of cybercrime. Intelligence places him firmly inside Russia. And the leaked chats revealed something even more concerning, though, not entirely surprising. There are strong indications that Nefedov is protected by high-ranking Russian political figures and agencies like the FSB and the GRU.
So it's that classic arrangement, don't hit Russian targets and we won't see you.
Exactly. It's a form of state-tolerated crime. As long as he stays within the borders of the Russian Federation and directs his attacks toward the West, he is, for all intents and purposes, untouchable by Interpol. He has a shield.
That protection explains his longevity. But he didn't just appear out of nowhere in 2022, right?
Right.
Just wake up one day and start running a global ransomware cartel.
No. Nefedov is a veteran. He has a history with other notorious groups, like Revil and Conti. In fact, Black Basta is widely considered a direct spin-off of Conti.
Conti. That's a name that sends shivers down the spine of any security chief. But they imploded spectacularly.
They did. And the reason why is crucial to this timeline. In April 2022, right after the invasion of Ukraine, Conti's leadership made a fatal business error. They publicly posted a message fully backing Vladimir Putin's invasion.
Which, in an international criminal group that employs both Russians and Ukrainians, that's a bad move.
It was catastrophic. It politicized their crime. Ukrainian members revolted, leaking thousands of internal chat logs. And victims in the West stopped paying because their lawyers warned them that paying a pro-Russian group could violate U.S. sanctions. The brand just became toxic overnight.
So Nefedov sees the ship sinking, grabs the best talent he can, and launches Black Basta as a rebrand.
Exactly. It was a pivot. Same skills, new name, less overt politics. and they hit the ground running. They started using some very specific tactics to get into systems, specifically utilizing QBOT or CACBOT.
I want to spend a minute on CACBOT because it keeps coming up. It sounds like a piece of legacy tech, doesn't it?
It is legacy tech. CACBOT started way back around 2007 as a banking Trojan. Its original job was just to steal bank logins. But over the years, it evolved. Black Basta didn't use it for that. They used it as a loader.
A loader?
Think of it as the person who holds the door open for the real threat. They'd use spear phishing emails, very targeted, convincing emails, to trick an employee into installing CACBOT. Once CACBOT was inside, it would phone home to its server and download the heavy artillery, the Black Basta ransomware itself.
So they were recycling a 15-year-old tool to facilitate modern extortion.
Efficiency is key in business, even criminal business. But even with all this, the group eventually started to fracture. By the summer of 2024, reports show they were in decline, and by early 2025, they were largely inactive.
Was that just law enforcement pressure, or was there trouble in paradise?
A bit of both, but intelligence suggests internal friction was a major factor. It turns out Nefedov's leadership style caused conflicts.
The CEO was a toxic boss.
It seems so. I mean, managing a remote team of high-ego cybercriminals has to be difficult. If you don't pay on time or if you micromanage, people leave. The instability led to a decline in operations even before the police started showing up.
So let's look at the current state of play. It's January 2026. The Black Basta infrastructure is seized. Key specialists are in custody. The CEO is isolated in Russia. I mean, it feels like a win. But looking at the broader data, specifically the World Economic Forum's 2026 cybersecurity outlook, I'm not sure we can pop the champagne.
I wouldn't. This takedown is a battle won, but the war itself is. It's shifting.
Yeah.
If you look at that WEF report, there is a stunning statistic. For the first time in years, ransomware has been knocked off the top spot of cyber threats.
What replaced it?
Fraud.
Fraud. That feels almost like a step backward. When I think of fraud, I think of credit card scams or, fake princes and emails. Is it really a bigger threat than shutting down a hospital?
In terms of sheer financial volume, yes, it's industrialized. We just saw the shutdown of a scam market called To-Do Guarantee. The amount of money flowing through that single platform was $12 billion.
$12 billion. That absolutely dwarfs the ransom payments we were talking about.
It does. And it signals a shift in the business model. Ransomware is loud. It gets you on the news. It gets CISA hunting you. It gets the German police raiding your house. Fraud. It's quieter, it's scalable, and frankly, it's becoming much easier to pull off because of new technology.
I assume we are talking about AI here.
We are. The report highlights AI-driven attacks as a primary driver. Generative AI is allowing these groups to create identity-based threats that are just incredibly convincing. We're talking about deepfake audio to authorize bank transfers or AI-generated documents that can pass verification checks.
So the barrier to entry for fraud has lowered, while the potential payout has just skyrocketed.
Exactly. And the report also flagged another emerging risk for 2026, over-the-air software updates for vehicles.
Right, because our cars are essentially rolling computers now.
Yes. And as manufacturers push software updates remotely to your car in the driveway, those update channels become attack vectors. We haven't seen a massive ransomware for cars event yet, but, well, the door's open.
It really paints a picture of a hydra. You cut off the head of Black Basta, and two more heads, fraud and AI, grow back in its place.
It is a constant game of adaptation. But there's one final thought I've been mulling over regarding the specific transition from ransomware to fraud.
What's that?
We spent all this time discussing those specialized roles. The hash crackers, the cryptors, the negotiators, those are highly skilled people, and their employer, Black Basta, just went out of business.
Right. They're effectively unemployed.
Exactly. But these people aren't going to update their LinkedIn profiles and go work for a bank. They have a very specific illegal skill set. And if the market trend is moving toward $12 billion fraud ecosystems, we have to ask ourselves, are we just seeing a workforce migration?
That is a fascinating, if terrifying point. You're suggesting the talent pool is just shifting sectors.
I think it's highly likely. The unemployed ransomware specialist is tomorrow's deepfake fraud engineer. The hash cracker might become the person cracking authentication for high-end fraud schemes. The players haven't left the game, they're just changing jerseys because the other team pays better now.
That is a sobering thought to end on. The idea that this workforce is just pivoting to the next profitable sector. Just like the rest of us, really, but with much higher stakes.
It's the economy of crime. It follows the money, just like any other market.
Well, thank you for walking us through all this today. It's been an eye-opening look at what actually happens behind the headlines of a big cyber takedown.
Stay safe out there.
And thank you all for listening to TechDaily.ai. We hope this gave you a clearer picture of the machinery behind the malware. We'll be back soon with another story. Until then, keep your systems updated and watch your inboxes.